Welcome. Here we are. It is Monday, August 7th. Yes, there's Mandy right there. Mandy, how are you feeling? Tell us how you're feeling today.
Amani, first of all, my girlfriends have named my summer cold Glenn. I waged this whole thing. I said, I've got a summer cold. We got to name her because once we conquer her, we can say, I conquered so-and-so. And so like Ruth, there was Cassidy. There was a lot of names submitted. And then one of my gal pals said, women get a bad rap about so many things. We got to name this a guy. Sorry, no offense, Money. She's like, we're going to name it after my ex-boyfriend that cheated on me, Glenn. So Glenn and I are still hanging out. I started a Z-Pack yesterday, which by the way, nobody, I have anxiety disorder. We've talked about this on the show before. Mm-hmm. Nobody told me that when you take a Z-Pack, you get the jitters. So I was a mess for about a couple hours after I took the Z-Pack yesterday, but it's all good. I got a system in place now. And I don't know. I'm better today than I was last week. But how about you? How are you feeling?
I'm doing well. I'm going to share something with you. But first, shout out to Dean LeBay, who's in the chat. Welcome, Dean. Also, we want to say a big thank you, Dean, for coming and being present on almost every one of our shows and being one of our most loving and supportive people. I think I said that right.
Dean, we love you. You just such a contributor. We love your questions. Yes. Thank you so much, Dean.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you, Dean. And then we also have to thank you to Cassie and to Corbin, who helped like with the trailer and the graphics and everything behind the scenes. So we want to say a big thank you to Cassie and Corbin. Anything else there?
Well, I think we want to say an extra big thanks because we had our 1-year anniversary show and then we had a lot of moving parts. It was a real circus. It was a fun circus, but we forgot to thank the C's. And we cannot do this show without Cassie and Corbin. So yeah, that's a 2-week belated happy 1-year anniversary to them too.
Yes. Yeah. So happy 1-year anniversary. I would guess the most exciting news for me is that, I've been writing this book and I just finished pretty much probably the majority of it on Thursday. So it's a huge relief. It's a lot of work. And I had a meeting this morning and we have some really cool ideas. So we're like kind of getting closer to the home stretch and I'm super excited and super happy. So that's probably the most exciting thing for the last week.
Amani, I'm so excited for you. I have a question because when I finished writing my book, I did certain things and this is your second book. So Correct. I want to ask you, how does it feel finishing writing your second book versus writing your first book? Because there's so many more knowns second time around. So how did it feel when you finished it on Thursday compared to the first time around?
It was probably a little bit less dramatic this time because I know that some edits are coming and they chop up things. But I'm excited because I was even more excited because this is a much longer book. Like we're talking, I have the notes. It might be like 140,000, 150,000 words, which is a lot of words.
That's a lot of
It's a lot of
words.
words.
Yeah.
So, um, it's primarily like a research book. It's probably gonna be like an encyclopedic book, but and you know how we have the fancy cartoons too that
Yeah.
I do? We're gonna probably add some of those into the book too. So it's
Oh,
like I'm excited,
fun.
but I know what's coming next, so I'm kind of better prepared. Because last time it was a shot to the ego when the editor got my book and chopped it up, and I was hurting for a couple of months, but I'm ready now.
Oh, I'm sorry you were hurting. Are you gonna use your book in your classes that you teach? Is this gonna be curriculum? Are you gonna hope to use it for curriculum in
I
the
hope
School of
to.
Business?
I hope to. It's kind of a little gray, but I hope to. I think so. So we'll see. We'll see how the class goes this semester, and that's the plan. So yes, good question.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now,
Congratulations.
talk to us about our guest today. I've got my notes here. I'm ready for this one too. Tell us, who are we talking to today?
We have a real interesting human. I'm so excited for her to be on the show. She is the founder of Scout Agency, which is a really interesting niche marketing firm, all about podcasts, everything you want to know about podcasts. And she's also the author, best-selling author of
Mhm.
The Emotional Entrepreneur, which I'm very excited about talking about. And she's got a couple podcasts. One of
Mhm.
them is OK Sis, which is super fun with her sister, and just a really awesome founder. So I think we should just bring her on. We've got Scout Sobel.
All right. Here's Scout. She's on your screen. Round of applause for Scout right there.
Yay.
Awesome. She's
Welcome.
yes.
Oh
What
my
we
gosh.
we have
Can
sound
I get
effects,
that?
everything.
Yeah, can I get that sound effect that can play whenever I walk in a room? I love that. That
Heck
was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're here. We really want to learn more about podcast guesting and that. We also want to learn more about you. My first question for you, though, is can you explain to us why do you admire the Olsen twins?
Oh my gosh. Can I tell you, I've been on 200 plus podcast episodes as a guest, and nobody has ever asked me that question. And I'm scared as to where you learned that information because that means you did the biggest deep dive on me ever.
Creeper.
Okay.
Amani's a creeper. It's good.
No, this is amazing. Give me a platform to talk about the Olsen twins all day long. So I obviously grew up on the Olsen twins. They're a couple years older than me, so I watched all of their TV shows and their movies growing up, etc. They were kind of, I feel like, the older sister of my generation. But this sounds so weird, and I don't know how I've ever been able to articulate it. But when they made the transition into fashion, it was incredibly inspiring to me. My mom raised me on fashion. It's been a love of mine that I'm not as public about. It's not part of my personal brand. But when I was really, really in the thick of things during when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, something that sparked beauty and creativity and inspiration for me every morning was going to Tumblr, RIP Tumblr, and seeing if there were any new photos of the Olsen twins outfits because there was something so interesting and fresh and new and exciting about the way they put together their clothing. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen on other celebrities and public figures. And every day I would refresh wanting to see. I mean, I felt bad that they were paparazzi photos, but I wanted to see what they were wearing. And that was sort of my escape, and it was my connection to something that was beautiful in this world. Even though it was just a beautiful outfit, it sparked something in me when I really didn't feel so alive in those days. And additionally, Mary Kate Olsen was on the cover of Nylon magazine, which I don't know if Nylon is still around anymore, at least not
Mhm.
print wise.
So many
And
RIPs.
I know. And I read the article on her, and it was the first time. I was 18 when I read it. I bought it, printed it out, and pasted it into my notebook because it was the first time I read a profile on someone that I thought was being written about me, or at least what I would want someone to write about me. And it said that she has really high highs and really low lows. And it was the
Mm.
most beautifully written article. I'm a writer first before I became an entrepreneur. And so I think, identified with the creative, beautiful worlds that they created with their outfits, with their fashion line, with the furniture, all the things. And it was an escape for me in my darkest times. And so I've always been a diehard now Olsen fan.
Hmm.
There we go. Lovely
That's
introduction
good.
there.
Yeah,
Great,
that's good.
great.
I want to dip into bipolar disorder because,
Mhm.
on this show, when we talk with founders and CEOs, we do talk about mental wellness a lot. I mean, I've been really open about my anxiety disorder. We've had other people talk about their highs and lows, but your bipolar disorder is such a big part of your story. So, and I have family members that have bipolar disorder. I've been through the process with them, the diagnosis, the hospitalization, the life after kind of thing. And I think if you don't know anything about it, you put it in this box of, that's just not me and that's the crazy person or whatever that is, which isn't fair because I've had people say that about me too with anxiety disorder. But I think normalizing it and talking about it is really important. Can you just, for the audience, just explain a quick definition of what bipolar disorder is and how that diagnosis showed up for you in your life and how it informs, who you are in your business? It's a triple kind of three-peat kind of question.
Yeah, let me see. Remind me. I want to make sure I answer all three of those points. So, my bipolar disorder, I'm type 2, which essentially means that I have mood swings, but I really typically err on the more depressive side versus the manic side. So
Mm,
I have more depressive episodes with hypomania mixed in. And in addition to that kind of just like baseline, I kind of alternate between hypomania and depression. I also have paranoia and psychosis, and I suffer from catatonia, which I think only a small percentage of people with bipolar disorder suffer from,
mm,
which is when your nervous system gets so overwhelmed that it just shuts down and you become essentially paralyzed. So, my personal symptoms run the gamut from anxiety, depression, psychosis, paranoia, and catatonia and hypomania. I was diagnosed at the age of 20. However, I mean, when you look back in childhood, there were definite moments
yeah,
of
yeah.
emotional turmoil for me as a child, but I really usually start my story at 14, which is when I had my first depressive episode. So by the time I was formally diagnosed, we have to remember, I know it doesn't sound that long ago, but it was 12 years ago. And 12 years ago, Instagram wasn't a thing. 12
Yep.
years ago, podcasts weren't a thing. There was no personal brand of someone who had bipolar disorder. There was no thought leader on mental health. There was no quotes graphically mocked up to help navigate this. And so when I received the diagnosis, I thought that I was done for, crazy, my life was over.
Mm,
And I had no one to turn to. I really feel like I healed by being inquisitive and curious and going to the self-help aisle in Barnes and Noble and looking over to make sure no one saw me there because it was not a cool
mm,
aisle 12 years ago to walk down. So when I got diagnosed, it felt incredibly scary. I really didn't feel like I had a future. And I talk about this a lot, but I think that the narrative that was given to me by my therapist and my psychiatrist were not one of empowerment, but rather one of disempowerment. And
mm,
so I really went through a difficult time in my 20s, including needing to drop out of college. I wasn't able to hold down
mm,
minimum wage jobs. There was a lot of talk of me not being able to function in society. And I obviously was able to turn that around. But that narrative continued even when I did have my business. I mean, I was told that I had too severe of a case to go off medication and get
mm,
pregnant naturally. And once I started realizing that the conversation was just around what I couldn't do and limiting me and other people being afraid of my own emotional landscape, that's when I realized that I had to, no one was ever going to feel safe around my bipolar disorder, and that's okay. But I had to feel safe within it. And so
mm,
I've been on a very intense healing journey. Entrepreneurship, I say, saved my life. It provided me the vehicle at which I
Mm.
could really, really channel this energy into productivity and success. I always say that I couldn't handle the minimum wage job responsibility. I can only handle responsibility when it's all on my shoulders.
ah,
So I can't get a psychiatrist note to get out of Scouts agency, right? Like if I don't show up, what happens?
mhm,
But I could get a psychiatrist note to get out of my shift as a hostess. So there's a lot of intersection between my mental illness and my success as an entrepreneur that I think they really worked hand in hand. And today I say that I take radical responsibility over my emotional landscape and radical responsibility over my life. I think that a lot of the narratives around mental illness is one of out of controlness.
mhm,
But actually, there's so many things that we have in our control if we can just facilitate and channel the energy the proper way.
I agree. And then just pay attention to those little pink flags, like where
Mm,
your illness is telling you, like, hey, we're about to have an episode, or we're not going to feel great today, or whatever that is. Cause those are, you're totally in control of all of that, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
I say that you might not be in control whether you feel an emotion, right? Like an emotion might pop up and you might not be in a place in your healing where you can control that, but you do control how you react to that moment. That is in your control, and that's where your power lies.
yeah. Do you
Amen.
remember how you got through the episode when you were 14?
I mean, not I mean, I didn't get through it very well. I went down pretty quickly, and I was wearing monochromatic sweats, and I joke, not the like trendy ones that got us through 2020. They were not cute back then. I was using forms of control to grasp at what was happening to me through food, which is not my issue, but it was just a way I coped in that time. I was unfortunately self harming, and my school found out, told my parents, and they started putting me through therapy. And it was, I look back and it's a blessing that I wasn't taken that seriously in high school, because I think a lot of the conversation was, is she a teenager who's having hormonal problems and acting out, or is there a bigger story here? And I took a 500 test answer whatever quiz, and I what's it called, was placed on the clinical to chronic depression scale. But I wasn't really put on meds. I wasn't super treated formally. I went to therapy once a month, and I'm really grateful actually for that, because I don't think that going on medication at that time in my life would have been the right thing for
Yeah,
me.
totally.
And it wasn't until I went away for college that I started losing touch with reality, thinking men were following me home, hiding under my bed, that was when my whole family was like, okay, she's not a hormonal teenager, something else is happening. And that's when it got more serious. But yeah, I mean, my friends all knew that I was the sensitive one, the one in the corner being emo all the time, and the one who didn't think she was invincible. And I would have emotional paralysis and not be able to finish my homework, or I took like a million mental health days and sat at coffee shops and read instead of went to school. I was definitely different than my friends, and everyone just like kind of knew.
Mhm.
I love what you did with the Emotional Entrepreneur, your book,
Mm.
because I think it's really important for people. I mean, being an entrepreneur is difficult as it is, right? But
Yeah.
I think what you did with it about the 25 mindsets and how to deal with that as a human, with bipolar disorder or not. I think it's good to put it in that box, because we all go through the gambit of all these different emotions as an entrepreneur. So, can you just talk a little bit about your book and like the system
Yeah.
of the book? Because I think the system is what is super valuable. The information is valuable, but that system in there is super
Mhm.
valuable.
Oh, thank you. So the concept of emotional entrepreneurship came to me when I started Scouts Agency, which I think I was 27 or 28 at the time when I started my business. And I had failed a couple businesses before, but this was really the first one where I was reaching some financial success within the business. And the whole year I was so anxious. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was crying all the time. It was so uncomfortable. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, wait a minute. I've been in therapy for like 15 years. I've been working on my mental health forever. I've been 5150, and I've been on every psych med under the sun. I've had really gnarly mental health issues. Why am I having such a difficult time with this? And I recognize that our businesses are really a mirror, and they really highlight your personal development and emotional weaknesses. And they ask you to work on it right now, because if you don't work on it right now, your business will swallow you whole. So I'm a people pleaser. And I remember
Mm.
going up to my apartment at the time, and I saw there was like a mirror next to the elevators. And I wasn't exactly a spiritual person at that time. I'm a much more spiritual person today. And I looked in the mirror and I just started laughing. And I was like, okay, God, I see you. I'm the biggest people pleaser in the world. And you had me start a business where I have clients. Like, that is a recipe for disaster for someone who's codependent and a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, for once and for all, I have to deal with this if I want my business to succeed. And so there was that part of it, seeing how emotionally difficult it was for me. And then there was the other part of it of I was watching my friends people I had met through podcasting, people in my circle, all women and men too, but they really wanted to start businesses. And I would listen to them talk about it. And I noticed that they weren't starting them not because they didn't have the education or they didn't have a good idea or most of the times because they didn't have the financial means. They had the financial resources to get something off the ground. They weren't starting it because of fear, because
Mm.
of their relationship to uncertainty, because of the anxiety that would come up with it, because of the judgment. And that's when I realized that starting a business has nothing to do, I mean, I shouldn't say nothing to do, but starting a business isn't necessarily about the P&L and the marketing and the hiring and the HR and all of those things. People weren't getting into the game because of anxiety and fear. People weren't getting into the game because of the emotional component. And I very clearly saw that all of my emotional problems were going to be the thing that made me sink or made me swim to success. And so I got pretty diligent and realizing that this was a hugely emotional game. And so I wrote The Emotional Entrepreneur. It's 25 mindset lessons that allow you to move through your business, working on your emotions and feeling safe within your emotions so that you can get to the next level. Because, yes, entrepreneurship has a lot of turmoil in it. There's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, but you shouldn't have to live in those polarities at all times. There
Mhm.
is a way to calm the storms a little bit and live in that middle ground as much as you can because you're taking good care of yourself. So, this book is for the woman who wants to start a podcast or a YouTube or an agency or a product based business or whatever business she wants to start. This is the emotional guidebook to get you through those first couple of years when you feel like every day you're getting hit with something else.
So
Now,
powerful.
exactly, yeah, definitely. What are your favorite three tools that you use or you recommend when people are going through emotional times as an entrepreneur?
It's so hard for me to recommend three tools because tools work so differently for everybody. The thing that I would actually recommend, because I could rattle three tools off. My three tools are journaling,
Hmm.
meditation, journaling are my main two, and a lot of mindset work. So monitoring my thoughts all day long, and every time a limiting one comes up or something that's not very nice, I challenge it. Is it true? And then I flip it and create a more expansive belief around it. Those are my three main tools that keep me on track. But those three tools aren't going to be the tools that work for everybody. So, and that's why I find a lot of personal development or healing for mental health work so difficult to prescribe. I think it's so different from, let's say, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Where they have a 12-step program. It's a little bit more subjective. So I always say, get really curious about the different tools. There's gratitude, there's journaling. I mean, there's a million, right? We all know them. There's embodiment, there's getting acupuncture, there's therapy, there's coaching, there's sleeping right, there's eating right, it's everything, right? And try them on and see which one works for you and be really curious. It took me years and years and years to find my core things. And now I'm so great at knowing, okay, what do I need right now? Do I need my tools or do I just need to go to bed early tonight? Do I need to meditate or
Yeah.
do I need to eat a healthy dinner? Do I need to, pray or do I need to dance to a song? What is it that I need internally? What is my mindset telling me? But to get to that point where you can do a quick scan and know exactly what tool you need to do takes so long. So give yourself the grace. It took me 10 years to get to this point where I feel safe in my emotions and I can navigate storms within 3 days versus 3 months.
Hmm.
But get really curious because I know if you're listening, you've heard of three tools. You've heard of it. And so it's not about what are the three tools. It's about, are you going to get curious enough to actually try them on and to give yourself the time to allow them to come to fruition so you can see the impact they've had over your life. And then once you know what works for you, do you have the courage to actually pause, ask yourself what you need in that moment, and then implement it?
I
Nice, nice.
I
I gotta
love the
shout out.
three tools. The three tools, it's like not the tools. It's what are your tools.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, great.
awesome. Yeah.
Shout out Todd. Welcome in, Todd, the co-founder of LifeSpace. So glad you're here with us.
Hi,
Welcome to
Tad.
Venture Your Business. I have a follow-up question, Mandy, but I want to ask about journaling and journal prompts. Do you have your favorite journal prompts that you really think are most effective? Because I think you do too, Mandy, participate in
Heck,
journaling, and
heck
I'm
yeah.
always looking for some very impactful journal prompts.
Mm. So I journal every single morning. I have probably about 15 black moleskin journals that I've had since I was 14. I fill about one a year.
Mhm.
And they've run the gamut over the years of what I do, but I have a 9-month-year-old, so I don't always, there we go. Yay. I have a
Yeah.
9-month-year-old, so I don't always get to it first thing in the morning anymore. But pre baby, it would be the first thing I do. I walk upstairs, I pour myself a cup of coffee, I sit down while I'm waking up, and I just go subconscious. Whatever comes to mind, I rattle it off. So I've never been a journal prompt person. However, there is one prompt that I do love utilizing, and that is soul journaling. And I use it to access my soul, or I use it to access my future self. So, what you do is you ask your soul or your future self a question. Like, I was going through a really hard time a couple months ago, and I called upon my future self and I said, what do I need to know right now? Like, what am I not seeing? And I just allowed her to speak to me. She spoke to
Mm.
me, and I just journaled what she would say to me. And she said things like, I promise you that this works out. From where I'm sitting here, we're doing this, we just did that last year. And I need you to continue because this version of me needs you to be where you are right now. And it just allows you to access a higher wisdom and allows you to take yourself out of the day to day minutia. I think, especially when we're in turmoil or when we're in crisis, especially around our business, because it's so tied to our survival, it's hard to see the bigger picture. So, soul journaling or future highest self journaling is my favorite prompt.
Mm.
Ooh. Amani, what's
You
your
taking
prompt?
notes?
What's your journal prompt you
Oh, I
do?
have so many prompts. I have so many prompts. I'm trying to think of. I like to write letters actually, so it's very similar to what you described. Maybe write a
Mm,
letter to myself 6 months from now or a year from now, or if there's a particular incident that happened or a person that made you upset, maybe you write a letter from their perspective to you. Just different things like that. But I think letters are very, very powerful. So that's kind of one of my
Mm.
favorites. How about you,
yeah.
Mandy?
I like to ask, what's my superpower today? That's
Okay.
because every day is different, right? Some days you feel awesome, and other day, like today, I feel sick. I'm like, my superpower is not my health today. Like, like,
Yes.
but I do like to, that's my, yeah, I don't know if it's a journal
Okay.
prompt, but it's a question I like to ask in the morning.
Hello to Cherry G and Steve watching us also. Welcome in. Okay, over to you, Mandy.
Well, I think we got to get to it. Let's get to the
Yes.
podcasting because um this is, an important topic. It's a huge medium, and you've built your whole business around it. So can you just share what Scout Agency is and
Mhm.
how you started it? And then Amani and I are probably going to fly a whole bunch of questions to you about podcasting.
Yes. So I started Scout's agency 4.5 years ago because 5 years ago this month, I started a podcast, Okay Sis, with my sister. And when I started it, I fell in love with the medium because I was having conversations with people, women I never thought I'd have access to, women that I definitely could not DM and say, can I pick your brain over coffee? Because they would say no. But when I asked them to be a guest on my podcast, they said yes.
Mhm.
And I was having these conversations where our phones were away, we were really zoned in, and we were having a purposeful, concentrated, vulnerable, impactful conversation for an hour. And I felt my sister and I going so deep with our guests so quickly that it formed these incredible relationships and these incredible conversations. And in a world where social media and digital media is fast and fleeting, I felt like I had found my footing in something that had such depth. So I fell in love with it for selfish reasons. It was giving me the network of a freaking lifetime. I mean, I always say my sister and I were two Jewish sisters that wasn't, we weren't like really had